Hey, welcome back to another story by Waking Nightmare. This story takes place at a wilderness visitor center, and it's quite a creepy one, so sit back and relax. Let's begin. So, I want to be upfront about something before I get into this. I've worked overnight shifts long enough to know the difference between a slow night and a quiet one. Slow nights drag. Quiet nights sit wrong. The kind of quiet where the building makes sounds you've never noticed before. Where the fluorescent light above the permit desk buzzes just slightly off pitch, and you start paying attention to things that have always been there but never seemed important. That night was quiet. 3 years at the Ely Visitor Center will teach you things no orientation covers. I mean the actual shape of the job, not the brochure version. I knew which outfitters stretched their launch window by half a day without calling it in. I knew the portage trails that flooded in April and turned passable again by late May, give or take a wet spring. I knew the permit database we used was running on software that predated my hire by at least a decade, and I knew the coffee from the gas station on Sheridan Street held up better through a long overnight than anything I brewed myself. My job was documentation and dispatch. Tracking who went in, who came out, flagging the ones who hadn't checked in when they were supposed to. Most nights that meant cross-referencing entry permits against departure logs, updating contact sheets, forwarding overdue notifications to the Forest Service liaison, and letting them handle the field response. I wasn't a search and rescue tech. I wasn't a ranger. I was the person who stayed at the desk and kept the information moving. That's the job, most nights. The desk smelled like printer toner and the faint ghost of whoever had spilled something on the carpet near the filing cabinet, months back before I started this rotation. My coffee was already lukewarm at 11:30, sitting next to a stack of permit printouts I'd been cross-referencing for the last 2 hours. And outside the window, the parking lot was empty and dark. And the temperature on the digital sign across the street read 32 degrees. It dropped a degree before the phone rang. 11:42. Ely Visitor Center, overnight. The voice on the other end was tight, controlled in the way that people get when they've been holding something in for too long, and the moment they start talking, they're afraid they'll stop being controlled. My name is Emily Arnold. I coordinate a youth outdoor program out of Duluth. We had a participant separate from the group this afternoon. A breath. Near the Moose Lake Portage Trail. He's 14. I already had a pen in my hand. What time did he separate? Around 7:30. I waited to see if he'd come back to camp. Another pause, and in that pause I could hear what she wasn't saying. It's been 4 hours. 4 hours, 31 degrees and dropping. 14 years old. Name? I said. Jasper Hayes. I was already pulling the incident form. Stay on the line with me, Emily. Tell me exactly where your group launched from and where you made camp. She told me. I wrote it down. I asked about gear, what Jasper had been carrying when he separated, whether he had a headlamp, whether he had any wilderness training. She answered everything in that same tight voice, each answer precise and ashamed in equal measure. By the time I had everything I needed from her, I was already on my feet, pulling my thermal layer off the hook behind the door. Rebecca Tran came through the front entrance while I was lacing my second boat. I hadn't called her yet. I hadn't called anyone yet. I'd been 30 seconds from radioing dispatch when the door opened and there she was, already in full gear. Forest Service jacket zipped to the collar, her go bag over one shoulder. 17 years. That's what Rebecca had on me. 17 years of field coordination, search response, wilderness incident documentation across the whole Superior National Forest. She wore reading glasses on a cord around her neck and had a small scar on her left hand that I'd never asked about. She didn't explain how she knew. She just looked at the incident form on my desk and said, Moose Lake Portage? Yeah. She set her bag down on the chair beside the door. Didn't sit, just stood there for a moment with her hands in her jacket pockets, and I watched her expression do something careful and quiet that I didn't have a language for yet. That sector has been informally flagged since September, she said. 3 solo hikers went missing in that corridor, 14 months, 3 incidents. I straightened up. I didn't see anything in the system. It's not in the system, she said it simply. Not defensive, just as a fact. 2 were found, 1 wasn't. I didn't ask which one. I don't know why I didn't ask. I think some part of me already understood that the answer to that question wasn't going to make the next few hours easier. Rebecca reached into the side pocket of her go bag and held something out to me. A laminated card. Standard letter half size. Text on both sides. She waited until I took it. If we find him somewhere that doesn't make sense geographically, she said, relative to his last known position, read that first, before you do anything else. I looked down at the card, behavioral protocols, displacement events. The font was small and dense and completely official looking, like something out of a training manual, like something that had existed for a while. What's a displacement event? I said. Rebecca picked up her bag. Let's go find the kid, she said. I'll explain on the way. The Moose Lake access point sits at the end of a gravel road that dead ends in a small clearing. 2 picnic tables, a bulletin board with a plastic weather cover, a fire ring that hadn't been used recently. I pulled in at 12:58, cut the engine, sat there for a second. 31 degrees. The digital sign back in Ely had read 31 when Emily Arnold called, and it hadn't climbed. I could feel it through the truck door before I even opened it. I checked my headlamp, checked my compass, and got out. The birch trunks came up fast at the edge of the clearing, white and thin, close together, the kind of tree line that looks like a wall until you're standing in it and then it's just trees. The ground was frozen at the surface, but soft underneath, and my boots punched through a thin crust of frost with every step. The sound of it was loud, too loud, the way everything gets loud when you're the only thing moving. I kept the headlamp low, sweeping the trail ahead. The portage path was marked, and I knew the first quarter mile of it from a permit check I'd done out here in August. Back when the ground was dry and the air smelled like pine resin, and someone had left a kayak rack unsecured near the launch point. Different places in the dark, same trees, different country. I didn't hear anything except my own breathing and the frost cracking under my feet. The first trail junction is about 6/10 of a mile in, where the portage splits, one branch heading toward the lake's western put-in, one curving northeast toward the upper shore. There's a wooden post with a carved arrow, half rotted, that the maintenance crew has been meaning to replace for 2 seasons. The backpack was leaning against that post, not dropped, not fallen, leaning upright, straps facing out, like someone had set it down carefully and intended to come back. I stopped about 4 feet away and just looked at it for a second. Dark blue, youth-sized, the kind with a padded sternum strap, both zippers closed. I crouched down and unzipped the main compartment just enough to check. Spare shirt, a small first aid kit, a bag of trail mix, a headlamp with the battery still in it, and the water bottle sitting in the side mesh pocket, full or close to full. A 14-year-old kid, separated from his group for 6+ hours, in 31-degree weather, and his water bottle was still full. You drink when you're scared, when you're moving, when you're cold. You drink. That's what your body tells you to do. You don't set your pack down carefully and leave your water behind and walk off into the dark without it. I stood up and keyed my radio. Rebecca, found a backpack at the junction post, matches the description. Zipper closed, water still inside, no sign of the subject. Static, then. Mark it, keep moving northeast. Copy. I tied a strip of orange flagging to the post just below the carved arrow. Northeast from the junction? Northeast. She didn't offer anything else, and I didn't ask for it. I took a compass bearing and I moved. 137. That's when I saw him. The granite outcropping comes up on the eastern shore. A shelf of rock that juts out over the water maybe 8-10 feet above the lake's surface. I'd never been to it directly. It's not on the main trail. There's no marked route to it that I know of, and the terrain between the junction and the shore is uneven enough that you wouldn't wander there by accident. Especially not in the dark. Jasper was sitting on the edge of it with his knees pulled up to his chest, looking out at the water. I stopped. I genuinely stopped moving. Just stood there at the tree line for a moment with my headlamp pointed at the ground so it wouldn't hit him full in the face and startle him. He was alive. He was sitting upright, not slumped. That was the first thing I registered, and I felt something in my chest just release. I called his name at a normal volume. He turned around. Yeah? Like he'd been waiting. As if I'd come to get him from a waiting room. I crossed the rock to where he was sitting and crouched down so we were at eye level. Hey, I'm Caden. I work with the Forest Service. Emily sent me. He nodded like that made sense. This kid just alone on a rock shelf above a frozen lake at 1:37 in the morning, and he nodded like I'd just told him the lunch order arrived. Can you tell me if anything hurts? He thought about it. Actually thought about it, which was a good sign. Kids in shock don't deliberate. No, he said. I'm cold. Okay, that's okay. I've got something for that. I unclipped the emergency blanket from my pack and shook it open. That sharp, metallic crinkle that always sounds absurdly loud, and got it around his shoulder. He grabbed the edges and pulled it tight without being told. I did a quick check, fingers first, both hands. He could flex them, no blanching, no waxy skin. I asked him to wiggle his toes inside his boots and he did. I pressed 2 fingers to the inside of his wrist and counted. Pulse was steady, maybe a little elevated. Nothing alarming. Color in his face was decent. He'd been out here over 6 hours and he looked fine. Genuinely fine in a way that I wasn't sure how to account for. I sat back on my heels and let myself look at his boots. I don't know exactly when I noticed it. Maybe it was the headlamp angle, or maybe it was just that I was already looking down and my brain made the comparison without me asking it to. My boots were dark with mud from the knee down. Frost caked at the toe. The Portage Trail is soft ground right now, especially the stretch near the eastern bend where a small creek crosses under the path. You can't walk it without collecting mud. You just can't. Jasper's boots were dry. Not a little muddy. Not wiped clean. Dry. Like he'd put them on indoors and stepped directly onto the granite. I didn't say anything. I looked at the boots and I looked at the rock shelf around us. And I looked at the dark water below. I didn't say anything. Do you remember walking here? I asked, kept my voice even. He frowned a little. I remember the portage path, the split in the trail, and then he paused, looked out at the water like the answer might be out there somewhere. And then I was here. Did you sit down somewhere? Rest for a while? I don't think so. I nodded slowly. Okay. I reached for my radio. That's okay, Jasper. We're going to get you back to Emily. He seemed relieved at that. At her name specifically. His shoulder dropped about half an inch and he exhaled and looked even younger, suddenly, than he had a moment before. Just a kid. Just a tired, cold kid on a rock in the dark. I keyed the radio again. Rebecca, I have the subject. Jasper Hayes, 14, conscious and coherent. Eastern granite shelf above the lake. Pulse normal. No frostbite. No apparent injuries. A pause. Copy that. Her voice was steady, but there was something in that beat before she spoke. A half second too long. Condition of his gear? I looked at the boots again. Dry, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Understood. Bring him out the way you came in. Don't vary the route. Copy. I clipped the radio back to my chest strap and stood up. Jasper was watching me, the emergency blanket crinkling softly around him every time he moved. Ready? I said. Yeah. He got to his feet without help, steady on the rock, and I handed him his water bottle. I'd carried it from the junction, clipped to the outside of my pack, and he took it, and finally drank from it. Long pull, then another. I turned on my compass, confirmed our bearing back toward the junction, and pointed my headlamp at the tree line. Stay close, I said. Step where I step. I want to be upfront about something before I get into this part of the story. Up until the moment Jasper started talking, I had been managing everything with the same framework I use for any overnight incident. Cold exposure, disorientation, terrain navigation error. I had a checklist running in the back of my head, and every item on it had a corresponding action. That's how I'm built for this work. That's what 3 years of overnight shifts does to you. You get very good at converting chaos into procedure, at finding the next step when everything else feels unsteady. Jasper started talking, and I stopped being able to do that. He didn't offer it immediately. We were still on the shelf, and I was giving him a few seconds to drink before we moved, watching the tree line and running my compass bearing again out of habit. The lake behind us was quiet. I mean genuinely quiet. No wind, no birds, nothing moving in the water. Just that flat dark surface and the cold coming off it. Jasper lowered the water bottle and held it in both hands and said, "Something was sitting with me." I looked at him. "Before you came," he said, "something was sitting with me." He wasn't distressed saying it. That was the part that landed strangely. He said it the same way you'd mention a detail you forgot to include, like he was finishing a thought he'd started an hour ago. I asked him what he meant. He thought about it. The emergency blanket crinkled when he shifted his weight, and he pulled it tighter around his shoulders. He said it wasn't exactly a person. He said it was shaped like one, shaped like someone sitting nearby, and that every time he turned to look at it directly, it wasn't quite where he expected it to be. A little to the left, a little further back. Like it was always just outside the frame of wherever his eyes moved, but it kept the wind off, he said. He said this plainly, not like it comforted him and not like it scared him, just like it was a thing that happened. I didn't say anything for a second. I was aware of my own breathing and the sound of frost settling somewhere in the tree line. I asked if it was still there. Jasper looked around the shelf, unhurried. "No," he said. "It left when I heard you. I don't know what I was expecting to see when I swept my headlamp across the far shoreline. I think part of me was still running that internal checklist. Disorientation, suggestion, hypoxic confusion from extended cold exposure. The rational explanations were still available. Moose Lake runs roughly 300 yards at its narrowest point from the eastern shelf to the far shore, and at that distance my headlamp doesn't do much. It turns the surface gray and makes the tree line across the water into a dark smear. I wasn't expecting to find anything. I was just doing what you do when a kid tells you something was sitting next to him in the dark. The reflection came back from the far tree line, not from the water, from the trees themselves or just at the edge of them. Something caught my beam and returned it flat, and I want to be precise about that word because it matters. Animal eyes give you color. They give you warmth. You get that orange-green glow from a deer, that pale copper from a wolf, and it moves when the animal moves. It has depth to it. This had none of that. This was flat, like light hitting a window from the wrong angle. That 1-second glare you get driving west in the afternoon before you adjust your visor. Bright and dimensionless and wrong. I counted 4 seconds. 4 distinct beats with my headlamp trained on that spot across the water, watching the flat reflection hold perfectly still. And then it was gone, not moved. Not faded the way an animal turns away or slips behind a tree. Gone the way a thought goes when something louder interrupts it. Between one blink and the next, the space where it had been was just tree line and dark and nothing at all, and I could not have told you which shadows had rearranged themselves to produce the difference. My headlamp was still pointed at the far shore. I lowered it. "Okay," I said, "we're moving." I got Jasper on his feet and I kept one hand at his shoulder as we crossed the shelf toward the tree line. I did not look at the lake again, I'm telling you that plainly. I made a decision and I kept it, and I want to be honest that the decision was not tactical or procedurally sound. It was not the move of someone who has assessed the situation and determined that maintaining forward orientation is optimal. I just knew, the same way you know sometimes, that if I looked back I would see something I could not categorize and that I did not have the right vocabulary for what happened after that. I told myself it was discipline. I knew it wasn't. We moved fast through the trees, faster than I would have liked with a 14-year-old in the dark on uneven ground. But Jasper kept up. He stepped where I stepped, the way I'd asked him to, and the emergency blanket rustled and caught on branches twice, and I yanked it free both times without stopping. My headlamp stayed pointed at the ground in front of us. My compass was in my left hand. I was navigating on bearing and trail memory and the muscle memory of my own boots having already broken this path, and I did not think about the lake. I thought about the laminated card in my breast pocket. I thought about Rebecca's half-second pause when I said dry. I thought about the 3 missing hikers from the September informal flag and the one who was never found, and I did not let myself finish that thought. We hit the junction post at 2:41. The orange flagging was still tied where I'd left it. Jasper's backpack was exactly as I'd found it. Straps outward, zippers closed. I shouldered it without stopping. It was his gear and he didn't need to carry it, and I took the southwest branch and we kept moving. The frozen ground cracked under our boots the same way it had on the way in. I noticed I'd stopped being bothered by the sound. The access point came up at 3:12 exactly. I saw headlights before I saw the clearing. 2 pale bars between the trees, the engine running. Rebecca's truck was parked at the edge of the gravel with the driver's door open and the cab light on, and she was standing at the rear bumper with a first aid kit laid open on the tailgate. Not rummaging through it, laid open, like she'd had it ready for a while. She looked at Jasper first. I watched her do a quick pass. His face, his hands, his feet, the same instinctive check I'd done on the shelf. And something in her shoulders settled slightly when she got to the end of it. Then she looked at me. I couldn't read what that look was. "Both of you get in the warmth," she said. She didn't ask how it went. She already knew we hadn't come back the same way we'd left. I mean, I don't know what she saw exactly. Whatever it was, she made a decision about it in about 2 seconds, and the decision was that questions could wait. She just moved past me to the backseat door, opened it, guided Jasper in with one hand steady on his shoulder, and tucked the emergency blanket edges around him like she'd done it 100 times. Maybe she had. Then she turned back and held out her thermos. I took it. My hands were steadier than I expected them to be, which I noted the way you note something strange. Filed it, kept moving. The coffee was dark and too hot, and tasted like it had been in that thermos since yesterday afternoon. I drank half of it in one go standing at the rear bumper. Rebecca walked around to the driver's side without a word. The Ely Clinic is a small building on the east side of town, and at 3-something in the morning it's just a rectangle of light in the dark. They took Jasper back almost immediately. Mild exposure, they said. Slightly depressed core temp. Nothing that rest and warmth wouldn't fix. The nurse who checked him in asked if he'd been conscious throughout, and I said yes, and she nodded like that answered everything she needed. Emily Arnold arrived just before 5 a.m. I don't know how she got there so fast from wherever her group was camped, but she came through the door in her program jacket, with her ponytail half fallen and her eyes red, and when she saw Jasper sitting up in a hospital bed, eating crackers, she made a sound I'm not going to try to describe. Jasper let her hug him. He looked a little embarrassed about it. The way 14-year-olds do. He was fine. He was completely, genuinely fine. I shook Emily's hand when she got to me. She said thank you twice and started to say something else. An apology, I think, about the delayed call. And I told her it didn't matter because it didn't. Not anymore. Rebecca drove me back to the visitor center just after 6. Neither of us talked. The gray morning light came through the window above my desk slowly, like it wasn't sure it wanted to be there. I'd made fresh coffee from the machine in the back, and I had my incident form pulled up, and I sat there for a while before I started typing my location. Moose Lake Portage, Eastern Granite Shelf, approximately 0.6 of a mile northeast of the junction post. Time of discovery, 1:37 a.m. Condition of subject, conscious, coherent, ambulatory, no frostbite, no visible injuries, pulse normal, mild exposure, confirmed by clinical evaluation at Ely Clinic. Method of extraction, accompanied on foot via Portage Trail to access point. Subject transported by vehicle to Ely Clinic. I typed all of it. I typed the flagged backpack at the junction post, the water bottle untouched, the compass bearings. I typed Jasper's name and age and the name of the program coordinator. I typed everything I could verify, everything that had a number or a direction or a time attached to it. I left out the reflection across the water. I left out Jasper's boots. I left out what Jasper told me about the shape that stayed just to the left of wherever he looked, and the wind that stopped reaching him. I don't know if that was the right call. I'm still not sure, but I typed what I had and I submitted it at 7:14 a.m. And I sat back in my chair and looked at the window. Rebecca came in around 7:30. She set her coffee down on the counter by the door, and she walked over to my desk and set the laminated card on it. The displacement event card. I'd given it back to her at the clinic. She'd added something to it. A handwritten note on an index card, paper clipped to the top. I read it. She'd written that of the 2 hikers found in the Moose Lake corridor, the 2 who came back, both had reported the same thing during their statements, something nearby through the night. Something that seemed to cut the wind. The 3rd hiker. The one who'd never been found. He'd gone in alone. No group, no program. No one tracking his departure time too closely. No one who noticed soon enough. No one came for him. I sat with that for a long moment, the thing out there. Whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, it keeps people. That's the only word I have for it. It keeps them. And it holds the cold back, and it waits. And if someone comes, the kept person comes home. And if no one comes, I didn't finish the thought. I didn't need to. Jasper was at the clinic eating crackers with his coordinator crying next to him. That was real. That was enough. I told myself that and I meant it. I drove home in full daylight, broad daylight, 7:45 in the morning, the kind of flat gray November light that makes everything look like a photograph of itself. I watched the way the birch trunks stood white against the dark between them, and every time I passed a gap in the trees, I looked for something flat where there should be depth, something dimensionless where there should be shadow and texture, and the normal geometry of a forest. I watched for the shape of something that only moved when I wasn't looking directly at it. I didn't see anything. My hands didn't stop shaking until noon. That was 3 weeks ago. Emily Arnold called the center yesterday. Not about paperwork. She said Jasper's been fine, mostly. Back in school, eating normally. His mom was relieved, she said. Everybody was relieved. Then she got quiet for a second and said, And I'm going to read this exactly how I wrote it down because I want to get it right. He does not cast a shadow the same way anymore. I don't know how to explain it. His teachers have noticed. The other kids have noticed. Nobody's saying anything out loud, but everybody's noticed. I didn't say anything. She said he also hasn't been cold once since he came back. Not once. It's been below freezing for 2 weeks, and he goes out in a t-shirt and just stands there, facing the tree line behind their house, just to the left of wherever you look. I haven't called Rebecca yet. I just don't know what to say. I don't know if we found Jasper out there, or if something just sent him back wearing him. Well, that was it. If you guys enjoyed this one, make sure to leave a like, and I'll catch you in the next one.